Let's wrap the newsroom. But hang on. Let me get into this. That's dead air, of course. Well, I guess it's just us now, Bob.
It's just us.
Whatever that means. I
Yeah,
don't even know.
I don't know. Wow, it was a
Oh,
monumental moment, I'm sure, if it made any sense.
you know how I am with this show, Bob. I'd much rather hate an episode than not care about it. And this episode wasn't completely hatred-free, but it was certainly more on the boring side than on the offensive side. One interesting thing that I will give the show credit for is we get sort of an experimental format, which is kind of cool. The hour of the newsroom coincided in real time with 1 hour of Newsnight with Will McAvoy, right? And
Right.
so I reckon they took some liberties. That was quite an eventful behind the scenes going on, of course. But I like seeing them try something, and I think it worked okay. I especially like any chance I get to see Mac being shown as good at her job, and she did a lot of running back and forth, keeping multiple plates spinning, and generally making the magic happen. What did you think of that formal exercise?
Yeah, I liked it too. I noticed Will on the TV interviewing guests at different points in the background, and sometimes the audio would fade in or fade out to him at key moments. Technically, it had to have been pretty tricky to line it all up and make it work with all of that. And even the clocks in the background, it was 8:15 at one point, and I think the show airs from 8 to 9 or something. And
Mm.
this is a geeky thing, but if they're going to pull it off, I mean, I was looking at different details like that, and it seemed like everything was on point for it to be during that key hour. So I enjoyed the new format too.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool. A very technical exercise, but I thought it was interesting to see him try something. Okay. I've got a portrayal of women alert, Bob.
I was waiting for this one because there was a lot of portrayal of women stuff floating around, and I wanted to see your take on this.
Okay, so we start off with nude pics of Sloane surfacing.
Yeah,
Now, on the one hand, I actually think it's a real thing that some women these days will pose for private pictures, and then those pictures can maybe get out when you don't expect it. Probably men too, for that matter. But
sure,
I think it's not entirely an uncommon part of grown-up sex life these days, and I actually find it sort of interesting to see the show deal with that.
sure.
That said, um, so what does she do about it? She goes into Don's office and just cries on the floor in the dark there, just I guess hoping Don will come. Would Will or Jim or Don just break down and cry as their main response? It's hard to say yes to that.
You mean would any lead character that isn't a hot woman bury themselves
Right.
down in on the floor and cry? Probably not. Yeah,
Exactly. And so of course Don stays with her to comfort her. I'm hypersensitive about the double standards here, but I was okay. We weren't outrageous at this point. We're like a 3 or 4 on the misogyny Richter scale here. Maybe you notice it, maybe not, whatever.
sure.
But it does show the fault line is still active. Of course, then she gets to the rage stage. Is that what she calls it, the rage phase?
Yeah,
And,
something
and,
like that.
and she goes out and hits her former boyfriend, which is a double standard, right? So if the roles had been reversed and Sloane's boyfriend came and hit her and made her bleed, that's a crime. And it was actually a crime when Sloane hit him, too, to tell the truth. People shouldn't hit each other. But it's okay for girls because I said people shouldn't hit each other, and people doesn't mean women for Aaron Sorkin, right?
That's a good point, Meg, because even if the roles were reversed and Sloane was the one who leaked photos of this other guy, and let's say he had a high profile and it mattered to his career in the same way, yeah, he couldn't retaliate by hitting her in the face and taking a picture of it. In fact, taking a picture of it, we would think he was a creep and like a borderline, sex offender or something. But like when she does it, it's like, ha ha ha, revenge, awesome, because she's a woman and she deserves an upper hand. What? Why?
Right, and I'll take back some of my outrage if they show that this ends up being even worse for her, like in the next episode, like if he sues and then they're forced to take her off the air because this is actual, crime stuff, battery. We have a word for it, um,
Right.
and it all of a sudden it's way worse than what he did to her, well, in a certain sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was my main thing. There were a couple other maybe quibbles we could have with Mac talking to that kid from Rutgers who wanted to come out on the air, but whatever. That's sort of par for newsroom course. I don't know. That was my main thing.
Okay, well, I wanted to see if you were on the same page as Maggie and Jim, waiting for the download. Their little talk about writing about sexist topics, but then with the Huffington Post having all this other stuff on it, so that means that you can't. And anyway, I wanted to see what your opinion of that whole scene.
All right, sure. So Maggie's been drinking a lot, right?
Yeah.
And oddly, I get it. Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I've had stretches where I've gotten drunk almost every night just to deal with my job. Anyway, Aaron Sorkin uses a drunk Maggie to make like this sex-positive statement in a half-assed way about it's the slut you just like sex, blah 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 blah. I don't know. I feel like it was sort of a guarded or a pulled punch because he made Maggie, who was drunk, say it.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too, how she had some brilliant insight while being drunk. That's not how it works in real life usually, but I guess for the the purpose of the scene, and she did make a point about if you're gonna take on sexist type topics and that if that's your MO and that's what you want to be known for, you could do it in a better way than this one particular person was doing it. But I guess Aaron Sorkin was using that one particular person as a proxy for how it's normally done in society or something, or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I thought it was trying to be a lot more insightful than it really was. That was my takeaway.
The newsroom?
We're talking about the same show? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was okay. It was a little, I don't know, a little look at me, I'm so great. But you can't get mad at me if you disagree because she's drunk. So it was like trying to have it both ways.
Right. Anyway.
Also interesting because right when they're having that conversation, just to get more of the plot here, Maggie, she says to Jim, who is obviously on to her, that she's drinking a ton, and she says, "Hey, has anyone complained about my work?" And he's like, "No, no." But after that downloads and she edits it poorly, people obviously are complaining about her work, and it just gets really rough for her because she's trying to say, "Hey, it happened because I was on a time constraint. Just I was doing it real time, didn't have time to double check and stuff like that. It could happen to anyone at the same time." It's like, yeah, well, we just had a conversation about how your work wasn't suffering at all because you were drinking. So, kind of interesting, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I'll put that in the positive column this week. I thought that was actually a pretty good plot device to show how there are consequences even when you think there aren't, when you can get away with things like drinking on the job. And I feel bad for her because she could very well have made the same mistake being sober, but you make a big point like that, then it's going to come back and haunt you. So, interesting.
Yeah, rough. So, F Charlie, man. He basically said he hopes your parents and my parents get bombed, along with a ton of people we went to high school with and all those Mormon aliens. The mountains outside Provo, we grew up there. F you, Charlie.
I know, come on! What was that all about?
That said, I actually kind of enjoyed the conversation he had with a non-spy spy friend of his.
Right.
Sorkin dialogue was actually a really great way to have those two guys talk around each other and insinuate instead of just come right out and say what they had to say. I thought that was nice work there.
Agreed. That was one of the better play-by-plays during the show. And the Utah reference was it was kind of quaint. It was nice.
Yeah, it was. So let's see. What else have we got there? Oh, so I guess that had important things on the Genoa project or the Genoa story because the guy gave him something that seems to really confirm that Genoa is going on. And since we know that in the newsroom world, Genoa ended up being a non-thing, this makes you think, is this guy really trying to just fuck with him? Say, oh, I'll give you something that's wrong, so you'll make a fool of yourself.
Right, yeah. I want to see how the pieces come together on this one because the super spy, I know everything going on in the government, in exchange for you not running stories I want or I don't want to have run, that guy perpetuating this myth of a thing that ends up being inaccurate later. I don't know how that's going to play out. And another thing, semi-tied to this in terms of timing and how things are playing out, open question for you or for anybody watching.
Okay.
What's with Maggie's hair? It's blonde and long again, but this is after she was in Africa and had the kid die on her back. But I thought pretty soon after that she went with the I'm cutting my hair to make a statement and dyeing it red. But then now it's blonde and long again, and we have a scene in this episode where we definitely know it's post that event happening. So what does that mean?
So I noticed that too, and the way I came down on this was that it sort of made me reevaluate what we've seen in the past. So we've seen everything leading up to Africa, and then we've seen whenever this deposition is happening, but we haven't actually seen anything between there. And everyone sort of talks about it as though it's a result of Africa, and maybe it is, but no one's actually explicitly said that it happened right after Africa. So I guess it didn't happen right after Africa. I don't know. Maybe it's what she does to get sober again. I don't know. But I did notice that, and that's the best I can explain it.
Um, yeah, okay, fair enough. I'll take that. You're doing Aaron Sorkin a favor for me. That's almost believable, but that's the best we have to run with right now, so I'll take it.
Well, I'm okay with giving the benefit of the doubt. I mean, they got the time right the whole episode. Maybe you think that
That's
his
true.
continuity expert would have noticed that.
Right, that's a good point.
So I guess we're winding down on this recap here. One other thing that, again, like I mentioned, I like to see the newsroom crew go to their job. So I liked when they sniffed out that con. It was just sort of a little like C or D story, but it was going through there, and then they put the hurt on him, like, oh no, you're wrong, and there's a policeman at your door. Hiya!
And I also liked Will being out of touch with Twitter. Like, can't they just at least wait for the show to be over to tweet? That kind of defeats the purpose of Twitter,
Right, right.
which was just kind of funny. And um, yeah, and what did you think of how he dealt with his father dying? And I mean, well, we covered it a little bit indirectly, but Mac trying to be a cheerleader, be like, no, you got to talk to your father because obviously there's some tension there, and um, he's trying not to let it interrupt the show, but then it does anyway. I don't know what to think of it. It seems like a big deal, and it fades to the credits with silence, not even music, as if like a major character died. And I'm like, I'm totally confused.
Yeah. I mean, Will's dad has been pretty bad dude, right? We know that he was very abusive, and then Will, when I was big enough to hit him back, he never hit anyone again. Um, and so he's not got the best of feelings for his dad, but daddy issues can often come up for people, especially when their dad dies, and maybe even especially when things are unresolved between them. So it seems like it could be a big thing to come. But I guess we're going to see the fallout next time.
I
So I
suppose
don't really know
so.
what to say.
Yeah, I just wasn't very emotionally connected. I felt really bad. Somebody's dad just died, and I was like, time for
Well,
bed. All right, good night,
the
everyone.
most wonderful man in the world's dad just died, Bob.
Oh, yeah, of course. That changes everything. I should have been in tears. Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
yeah. So, so yeah. I guess that's it for me on the recap. Anything more before we move on?
No, I feel like it was kind of a boring episode in some ways, but what do you do? It had its moments, but let's hope it picks up.
As always, as always.